Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So just like that, it is already June, and today I'm recapping all of the movies and shows that I watched in the month of May. 31 days gone in the blink of an eye. It'll be July before we know it. But before I get into this, be sure to hit that like button. Comment down below all the movies and shows you watched and your favorite movie you watched in the month of May. And of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 80,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. Without further ado, let's dive right into everything I watched this past month. So I usually go to my Letterboxd to start these videos off, and I watched a decent amount of movies, not as much as I normally would. Did a lot of traveling this past month. I was out of town for like 10 straight days, visiting my buddy Trevor from Film Geeks. He got married, shout out him. But I'll go ahead and start out with the movies. So on May 5th, I rewatched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which solidified it as a top 4 MCU movie for me. It's my favorite Guardians film. James Gunn knew how to send off these characters beautifully. The soundtrack I still listen to frequently in my car, and it is just a movie that's resonated with me. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's still doing numbers at the box office, which I really appreciate. Love to see a win for the MCU, and this is like universally loved, so shout out Guardians 3. Moving on May 9th, I rewatched the original Fast and Furious. The movie came out in 2001, and I'll be honest, there was a point in time where I used to actually enjoy this franchise leading up to Furious 7. In my eyes, Furious 7 is the real ending of this franchise. But going back to the one that started it all, I truly forgot how enjoyable it was. It was a lot simpler, the stakes were super low. Literally, Brian O'Connor goes undercover to try and infiltrate this group, this family, if you will, who's pulling off these heists on 18-wheelers. It was a really sleek movie. Street racing was more at the forefront, and you cared more about the characters before it got all overblown and just super CGI action-packed nonsense that the franchise would become. This was probably one of the best still of the franchise, and I honestly enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would on rewatch. Moving on though, on May 13th, on a plane, mind you, I rewatched one of my all-time favorites, The Social Network. This movie is a 2-hour time killer, seriously. Like, the flight flew by because of it. This is like a top 10 most quotable movie for me. Like, I just find myself throwing out lines left and right, thinking about it in my daily life pretty much, and I'm still baffled that the movie didn't win Best Picture at the Oscars. I'm also baffled that Andrew Garfield was not nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and I'll even throw a bone to Justin Timberlake. He plays such a dick in this movie, and he excels at that. I could quote this one for days, and it truly is a top 10 all-timer for me. But then moving on to May 17th, I got to experience Fast 9 for the first time, and to say it was life-changing would be an understatement. This movie was so profound, and it moved me, and I can't continue this bit. The movie sucked. This is where any sense of logic was fully thrown out the window, and I'm not one to be like a stickler for following the rules and like logic in films when it comes to physics, but I tell you, this movie makes no sense. People are bouncing off of cars like trampolines. People would be dead. Like, if this movie was set in reality remotely, everyone would be dead in the first 5 minutes. And honestly, it might have been for the better, because my god, was this movie so boring. Lacked any of the charisma with a character like Hobbs or even Jason Statham Shaw. Just a total miss for me, and John Cena was doing way too serious of a bit. He's more of a comedic actor, and they let him do that in Fast X, but in this film, he was just so restrained by this god-awful movie. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars for some reason. I must have just been nice, because I remember falling asleep multiple times near the 3rd act. Moving on May 18th, I watched Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, which is a top-tier Fast and Furious movie. And the reason is, it's not attached to that Fast and Furious formula. We get Hobbs and Shaw at the forefront here. It's an action film first and foremost, and Idris Elba plays the villain. It's not groundbreaking in terms of action, but it's badass. It's directed by David Leitch, who did Bullet Train, and that's one of my favorite movies from last year. And the movie has charisma. It has heart. Things that I find to be lacking in the latter entries of the Fast and Furious franchise. I just think that it's a badass time. It's a little too long, and if you've seen the trailer for the movie, it reveals literally the entire plot. But I was late to the party, and it ended up being one of the better Fast and Furious films for sure. And then rounding out this whole Fast and Furious discussion, on the 19th of May, I watched Fast X. Quite possibly the worst film in this franchise. I am not just saying this lightly. I've never been more jarred, damn near disturbed, by the credits rolling in a movie, because it ended in the middle of the climax. And I'm not just saying that. Literally, something very serious happens, and the screen just cut to black, and the credits rolled. And that was it. It was like, yeah, I get it's a part 1 and 2, possibly even a 3-parter for the conclusion of this entire franchise, but my god. Have an ending. I was shocked to my core that it just wrapped up the way that it did. There was no finality. There was no conclusion to the story. It completely abandoned the structure of a movie, and the action wasn't that memorable. It has some of the lamest action action set pieces. My favorite sequence in the film was a street race early on that felt sort of like an homage to the earlier films. And of course, Jason Momoa is having a lot of fun in the role. He's definitely playing a psychotic character, and he had fun in the role. He's one of the few bright moments. Also, shout out John Cena. He got to do his Peacemaker bit where he was fully committed to the comedy. Brie Larson was a scene stealer for me. I wish we got more of her character. But this movie is just riddled with issues, and my god, is it stupid and overly long. It felt like a 5-hour affair. Then on May 22nd, I rewatched another one of my all-time favorites on the plane ride back, The Departed. This movie is my favorite Scorsese flick. This rewatch solidified it. I am still baffled that Jack Nicholson, Matt Damon, and Leo weren't nominated for Oscars and Mark Wahlberg was. He is the weak link of those 4 performances, but he's still amazing. There are so many quotes I throw around in this movie to my friends. It's surprisingly hilarious, but it also is one of the more shocking mob films I've ever seen. Like, if you watch this movie and you haven't been spoiled for it, you will not see the ending coming. I promise you that much. It will blow your mind. But moving on the 24th, I rewatched the original Little Mermaid, and frankly, I was a little bored by the movie. It definitely has that charm and magic of a classic Renaissance-era Disney film. The music's unmatched, notably Under the Sea. That's such a bop. But the movie just doesn't hit as much as I remember it. Now, I don't have the nostalgia for this one, but it definitely prepped me for the live-action remake, which I watched on the 25th, and to be honest with you, I enjoyed this more than the original, and I think it's a better movie than the original. It fully fleshes out Ariel and Prince Eric relationship, making it more believable, more emotional. I loved the kiss the girl sequence and the way that it played out. Little dynamics about their relationship were switched up too that made it more heartfelt and realistic, and all around, I just found myself enjoying this movie way more than the original. Now, I do think that it was missing on certain aspects musically, like Under the Sea didn't hit as hard, and the Scuttlebutt was a stupid, unnecessary song that was thrown in, but at the same time, I'll take that if we get the Lin-Manuel Miranda bops that we did. Wild Uncharted Waters is another song in the film that really hits. It was cool to see sort of a new perspective on Ariel coming to land and really exploring that a lot more, especially the market scene when we get to see her and Prince Eric hanging out and just bonding more. That was all absent in the original film, and this one expanded upon that for the better, making it one of, if not the best, Disney live-action remakes. But moving on, we are getting into Spider-Man territory. I won't go as in-depth here as normal because I'm having a ton of Spider-Man videos coming out this week, especially my ranking of all the movies, including Across the Spider-Verse, so stay tuned for that. So on the 25th, I actually started my Spider-Man journey with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, had to rewatch that to prep for Across the Spider-Verse, and honestly, I forgot how great this movie was. I was starting to get under this mindset that it was a little overrated, and whenever I kind of don't watch a movie for 3+ years, which was the case here, I start to forget little details, and I'm like, is it actually that good? It's that great. It's damn near the best Spider-Man film, and I think that people are already being quick to dismiss its greatness with Across the Spider-Verse hitting theaters. We'll talk about it in a second, but Into the Spider-Verse, damn great movie. Then on the 26th, I rewatched the original Spider-Man, and on the 27th, I watched Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, completing my rewatch of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Won't go too in-depth here, but I will say Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is the man, and the Raimi trilogy has the best Spider-Man villains out of any of the live-action films. And then on the 27th, also, I rewatched The Amazing Spider-Man, and I would say this was almost an eye-opening watch for me because I really loved this movie when I first saw it back in theaters, and then I kind of fell off with it over the years. I was like, oh, maybe it's boring, or I don't enjoy this movie as much as I thought. Honestly, no. The James Horner score is immaculate. It's a really solid origin, and the charisma from Andrew Garfield carries this movie. Him and Gwen have the best live-action on-screen romance in a Spider-Man film, and that bleeds right into The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I rewatched on the 28th of May. That movie is super solid. It's the most overhated Spider-Man movie. Now, don't get me wrong, it's got its issues, but so does Spider-Man 3 and a lot of these other live-action films. I think people, including myself in the past, and I'm ashamed to admit it, have overhated that movie by putting such an emphasis on these like 15 to 20 minutes of the movie when there's so much greatness right in front of your eyes as well. Got the best web-swinging action in the entire live-action catalog of Spider-Man films, and it has the best romance in a Spider-Man film. Then on the 29th, I rewatched Spider-Man Homecoming. I stand by the statement, Vulture is a top 3 Spider-Man villain and MCU villain. Michael Keaton just owns that role, and the car scene, the tension there, it's palpable. You can feel it when you're watching it. It's just a fun coming-of-age high school flick. It does lack in the web-swinging department, but I'll talk about that more in a video later this week. And rounding out my May movie watches, I had the opportunity to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse early on May 30th, and I really dug this movie. Now, I'm going to see it again later today when this video drops. And I have a full review. You guys can check it out linked up above for my more in-depth thoughts on this movie, but it's a movie that requires multiple viewings to fully process everything that goes down because it is loaded. It's a 2-hour and 20-minute movie. We're exploring these grand ideas within the Spider-Verse, but it's filled with gorgeous animation. In fact, the most beautiful I've ever seen put to the big screen. Gwen Stacy is the MVP here. They really flesh out her backstory a lot more, and there's so much to love in terms of being a Spider-Man fan. Like, there are nods, cameos, Easter eggs. If you love Spider-Man or just enjoy Spider-Man, there will be something in this movie for you. There's a lot to unpack. Again, multiple rewatches will help, and I think this movie over time I will appreciate even more, but I do think it's ever so slightly overhyped. It's not the greatest comic book film of all time, but not everything needs to be deemed the greatest of all time. It really makes me sick that we live in a society that just does that. It's a great movie. Go enjoy it for what it is. But that does it for all the movies that I watched in the month of May, and I'll be watching a plethora of films as we head into June. That's when summer movie season's really going to be picking up. But in terms of TV, I watched a fair share of television this past month. Two of the best shows that were on TV came to an end in the month of May. Barry and Ted Lasso. Although I thought Barry season 4 was one of the slower seasons of the bunch, it had a very satisfying conclusion. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just going to say you guys need to watch this show if you haven't. Bill Hader is an absolute genius. Everyone had a fantastic arc in that final season, and it's one of those finales that I'm going to have to sit back and analyze for years to come. Like, reading a lot of these discussions online about it and hearing everyone's perspective has really made me appreciate it more and more. Kind of ages like fine wine almost when you realize more of the symbolism behind the shots and the small little decisions that were made. I've even gone back and rewatched some scenes from Barry that foreshadow what was to come. It's brilliant writing through and through. It totally sticks the landing. Masterful television. Can't praise it enough. Check out Barry if you haven't. But of course, on the other hand, we've got a little bit of a more lighthearted show in Ted Lasso, which just had its third and final season, and the show is now over. Now, Ted Lasso season 3 was the weakest of the 3 seasons, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. It had its ups and downs, but by the end, it fully stuck the landing, and no matter what, this show always warmed my heart by the end of every episode. The finale was so wholesome. Like, I just had a smile on my face the whole time. I had tears falling in my eyes. It felt like just a beautiful goodbye to all these characters that we got to know and love over the past 3 seasons. And although it might have lost its way in the middle of the season, I think the finale brought it home so well, and Ted Lasso is going to be a comfort show for me for a long, long time. But my favorite thing that I watched in the entire month of May was my Stranger Things rewatch. I rewatched every single episode of the show. Season 4 actually dropped an entire year ago now, which still blows my mind. Time really does fly. But Stranger Things is my favorite show of all time, and I will be rewatching it multiple times as we wait for season 5, because frankly, we don't know how long that wait's gonna end up being. But season 4, top tier season of TV that I've ever seen. Multiple moments that feel almost out of body to me where I just am like elevating. Like the Dear Billy episode, the whole Max Vecna chase scene, it blows my mind. The piggyback is filled with moments like this. This season of TV might have my favorite soundtrack I've ever heard in a piece of media, and it just means so much to me. Stranger Things has been a part of my life for years. It always will be, and season 4 was incredible. This rewatch just further solidified to me my love and adoration of this show. I can't wait for season 5 when it eventually drops. But that's pretty much everything that I watched in the month of May. I probably forgot 1 or 2 things, but that's just the way that it is. Let me know down below in the comments your favorite movie or TV show that you watched in the month of May. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 80,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And stay tuned for tons of Spidey videos coming from a ranking of all the movies to a tier list of the villains and more. Gonna be a big Spider-Man related weekend, and then we're headed right into the blockbuster summer movie season week after week. Content's gonna be coming, so don't you worry. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.